Dino Costa is on your radio. Now,
Dino Costa.
It's Thursday across North America and around the world, and you're listening to the worldwide Dino Costa radio experience on Sirius XM's Mad Dog Radio.
Hour number 2 on this Thursday show. And thank you. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it's the Dino Costa Show on Sirius XM's Mad Dog Radio. It's, it's a Thursday show. It's July what is it, Kaplan? July 25?
That's it.
Man, we're almost into August, baby. Preseason games are going to start on what? August 5 is the Hall of Fame game, I believe. It is, I tell you, it's incredible to see the days flying off the calendar. And speaking of that, it's been how many days now since Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football's name, has not been in the news? How many days? So that's refreshing. And have you gone out, have you bought the book yet? I had the author on my show a couple of weeks ago, Becoming Big League, Seattle, the Pilots, and Stadium Politics. Bill Mullins is the author. We got in depth with this book. Go out and get it. If you love reading about baseball history, you'll like this book. Kaplan and Mendy's in New York running the show. Mr. Joshua is here in the great small town of, where do we live, Mr. Joshua? We live in what town? Cheyenne, baby. Cheyenne, Wyoming. That's right, boy. Yeah, no. I was just, struck by the whole Brian Gumbel thing last night when I was watching that Real Sport. I talked about it in the first hour. What I was amazed mostly at was Bryant Gumbel's composure at the revelation that you've got a soccer team here in the United States, a major league soccer team, the Chivas USA, and the discriminatory policies that they're employing, and nobody, not only is no one talking about this, that's number one. I mean, you won't find this reported on anywhere. Okay, I didn't know. Did you know about it until I told you about it? No, and I would imagine that there were a bunch of people in my audience who didn't know about it either until I told them about the Real Sports piece last night. And there's Gumbel sitting there and trying to rationalize this with Soledad O'Brien, who, by the way, is feeling her way still on that. It's too bad Bernard Goldberg can't do all of the Real Sports pieces. I mean, it's as good as... And who's that surfer dude, Kaplan? I don't know if you saw it. Who was the surfer guy they had on? His name is, I think, Kelly Slater, I think his name is. Oh, yeah, what a life this guy's got. By the way, did you see the episode I'm talking about?
No, I haven't seen it.
All right, you've got to see it. You've got to see it. I mean, because there's Gumbel. Now, Soledad O'Brien gives this report on Chivas USA. This is, the team is owned by the same guy that owns Chivas de Guadalajara in Mexico. Is a billionaire guy. He owns the team. And so he bought Chivas USA outright last year, and he said that they're going to go back to their Mexican roots. And so virtually, one by one, in a systematic process, virtually everyone who was not either Mexican or of Mexican descent was shown the door. Okay? So they send little old Soledad O'Brien out there to do the story. And she comes back, and you know how at the end of every segment they bring it back to New York, where Gumbel talks with the person who did the report. And in this case, it was the aforementioned the Soledad O'Brien. And so Gumbel is sitting there, and he's trying to rationalize this. And I kept thinking to myself, has madness, entered your brain here? You mean to tell me if this was a situation in which, let's say, people of Bryant Gumbel's very own skin color were being discriminated against, you mean that Bryant Gumbel would have sat there, Kaplan, and would have said to Soledad O'Brien, well, can this not be argued that this is good business sense?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I couldn't believe it. And so what I said during the first hour, among other things concerning this particular story, was I wondered aloud whether or not the sports media columnists in this country would find this little piece of information here just a little bit puzzling given that he being Bryant Gumbel was just very nonchalant, easy come, easy go. Oh well, it's. And again, what this does is it again shows the hypocritical nature of the media, the sports media, the media in its entirety. It shows it loud and clear once again. And I wondered if the producers of the show, even after they were watching the taping and it was done, if they too said, how can Bryant Gumbel be so just, as I used the word before, nonchalant when it comes to this? How could he not feign anger, shock? This is 2013 here in the United States of America, and you mean to tell me that people that are not of Mexican descent, even black people, are not welcomed on Chivas USA? The last time I checked, Kaplan, Bryant Gumbel himself was black. I think he's black. I don't want to say with certainty. I think he's black. But nothing, no outrage at all. No. And of course, what this also does is give you, it provides you with the latest example of what I said, I think, in the first hour, that this does not fit the people don't get upset about this, Bryant Gumbel and others. It's not reported on. If it is reported on, it's buried on, page 112 in your daily newspaper somewhere where you live across this country. And it doesn't fit the profile and the criteria that the news media loves. And what they look for, what they're on the prowl for every single day, are stories of where the white man is doing the rest of the world dirty. Now, if in my fictitious analogy, Kaplan, when I said put a team in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and the owner has gone through all kinds of data, raw statistics that before they launch the franchise show that not only season ticket holders, but even corporate marketing sponsors would be more inclined to give their dollars to a theoretical Edmonton, Alberta MLS club if it was comprised with the majority of the roster being white. Now, Soledad O'Brien goes out and does a story on that and comes back to the studio. How do you suppose Bryant Gumbel would have been when they came back?
Yeah, it's going to be a grilling.
Just a little bit differently in terms of his attitude and his projection, no?
Yeah, a little bit.
Just slightly. A little bit. A little bit. So there's that, and then I've been talking about the PEDs and steroids and the situation where a player, Robert Fick, has come out. Not a big name, but the other side to the equation, as I was talking about it in the first hour, was that there will be a litany of players who, if we could have revelations, tell us that many players who you never would have suspected using steroids in the last 10, 15, 20 years were indeed using steroids. And this all came about with Roy Firestone. I saw a report maybe 5 minutes before I took to the air here today where Roy Firestone, who used to host the terrific show Up Close on ESPN, those were back in the days when ESPN valued substance over style, steak over sizzle. He had that show, and he came out with a report that said that, well, not so much a report, but he had posted something on a Baltimore Orioles fan message board, said that a player of note was going to come out and admit that he used steroids in the 90s, and 90%, not in the 90s, but throughout his career, and that 90%, I meant to say, of all the players around him were using steroids as well. And the player turns out to be Robert Fick, who was a catcher and first baseman. And I knew Robert Fick going back to 97 because he was in the Midwest League the same year that I was. And, in fact, he won the Midwest League batting title that year for the Lansing Lugnuts, who that year were the Class A affiliate in the Midwest League of the Detroit Tigers. And played himself. His first game was in 98. He had a cup of coffee at the end of the year with the Tigers, and he concluded his major league career in 2007 with the Washington Nationals. Played with the Tigers, the Braves for a season back in 2003. The then Devil Rays, the Padres for a couple seasons, and his final 2 seasons were with the Washington Nationals. Here's a guy that played in a collective amount of 846 major league games, 2,658 plate appearances, totaled 613 hits, 116 doubles, 12 triples, 69 home runs, 324 runs batted in. Lifetime career 258 hitter, on-base percentage lifetime of 328, lifetime slugging percentage of 405. And so, again, this is one of those players that I told you about that you never would have. The last player that I was thinking about when I was, running through the Rolodex in my mind of what player it could be, the last guy that I was settling upon was a guy like Robert Fick. Yet here's this guy admitting that he used steroids, and that 90% of the players that played both with and against him throughout his career were also using steroids. Now, what's his purpose? Is he trying to sell a book? I don't think so. I don't think that Robert Fick has written a book. Is he going to write a book? Probably not, because Robert Fick is one of the more anonymous players, despite playing 846 games in the major leagues, is one of the more anonymous players that you're ever going to think about. He certainly didn't do anything of significant note. He did hit the last home run at Tiger Stadium before they shut down that glorious ballpark. But other than that, Robert Fick was a nondescript player on a number of teams. He was a role player, and he was a guy who used steroids throughout his career. So you say, well, this is not Mike Piazza. This is not Ken Griffey Jr. This is not, any one of a number of players that you might want to bring into the fore here. So maybe Robert Fick, because of his anonymity, he doesn't have as much to lose maybe as a lot of other players. What do they have to lose at this point? I mean, really, what is it that they have to lose at this point to come forward and to admit, look, hey, you know what, I'm tired of this. All right? Yes, not only was I doing steroids, but yes, 90% of the other players in baseball clubhouses across America during that time period, they were using steroids as well. You know what? And look, if I'm raising my hand, those who may not want to come out and admit it, fine. How they live with themselves, I don't know. But not only was I doing it, everybody was doing it. It's like admitting that you used cocaine, not as an addict, but in a recreational fashion throughout the late 70s and on into the majority of the 1980s. Let me be the first to raise my hand and tell people from time to time, I too dabbled in cocaine. In particular, one summer, probably more so than I should have. Okay? How many people could say that? I mean, back then, everybody was using cocaine. I mean, it was the recreational drug of choice. So, as much as I admire Robert Fick for coming out and saying that, and we're going to hear from him in just a second. He was on Los Angeles's, what is it? Good Morning Los Angeles is the name of the show?
Yeah, Good Day L.A.
Good Day L.A. Okay, so we'll hear from Robert Fick here in just a second. But as much as I admire Robert Fick for coming out and admitting that he used steroids, it's high time for the rest of the collective major league community to come out en masse and to back this guy up and to say it was not only Robert Fick, obviously. I mean, you don't need anybody else to come out to point out the obviousness of this to you. You know how many players were using steroids? A bunch. I mean, if you weren't using steroids back during this time, you were in the severe minority in Major League Baseball. So what baseball needs is they need more in the way of other players coming out. Not only one or two, not only 15 or 20. I'm talking about hundreds need to come out. Because you know what it will do? I was hinting at this and getting at this in the first hour. It will cleanse in some incredibly, almost impossible way of thinking when you get right down to it in mass with hundreds of players coming out. You know what it does to that period of time? It somehow cleanses the game. Somehow. The stuff has finally come out. It's out of the system because it's still harbored up in the system right now. It's gumming up the works. So whether it's Roberto Alomar or Sandy Alomar Jr. or, any one of the John Rocker, who I have no question was using steroids back during that time, or any one of a number of guys, they need to come out to cleanse baseball of this awful time. They need it cleansed. Just like the rampant gambling, which almost destroyed the sport back in the 19-teens, culminating with the White Sox and the Black Sox. And you know what? We needed to get past that. We needed to deal with it directly, face it head on. And that came out in the wash. And it kind of cleansed the sport at the same time. It worked as sort of like a therapeutic sort of a process that baseball went through. So it starts at Robert Fick, but hopefully it doesn't end at Robert Fick and more players come out because, come on, hey, guys, we know you were using. Okay? We're not stupid. We know you were using. Now, admit it, very few of you. I mean, a microscopic percentage of you are ever going to garner any Hall of Fame consideration to begin with. So what do you have to hide here? What do you have to lose here theoretically? Nothing. If anything, you are going to be lauded. You are going to be people are going to want to compliment you and shake your hand and they're going to admire you for your stance and what you've done. They're not going to beat you over the head with a billy club. That's not going to happen. All right, here's Robert Fick on Good Day L.A. earlier today, and let's take a listen to this segment. And I think we do hear from comments. We do get some comments, I meant to say, from Robert Fick, who admitted today to using steroids and said that 90% of players around him, both with him in his own clubhouse and across the major leagues during his career, 90% of the players were using steroids as well. Here it is.
An all-star in the year that he hit this famous Grand Slam, the last homer ever at Tiger Park in Detroit.
Al told him he'd hit a home run today.
Oh, and he did! There she goes! And it is on the roof! Robert Fick, a grand slam that hits the roof and comes back. K-Line called it.
What
the
great,
glory days.
amazing moment. And the glory moments in baseball are wonderful. What's happening in baseball right now makes all of us scratch our heads and saying, are we being...
Hello? Gentlemen? Mr. Kaplan.
Sorry, the
Glory
audio stopped.
days.
Amazing moment. And the glory moments in baseball are wonderful. What's happening in baseball right now makes all of us scratch our heads and saying, are we being lied to or are we being deceived? That moment,
All of these moments look different.
yeah, let's go to that moment. Were you on any kind of drugs at that point?
No. I didn't know any better at that point, you know. I was still a rookie, so I was actually hurt that whole season and had shoulder surgery and got called up late August, and you know, I was lucky enough to be in the lineup that day to hit that ball. But
Okay,
I was all right
I
there.
hope we get really to the crux of what people don't get to in these discussions. You've lived it, you know it. I know you're not going to rat out a lot of guys, but the reality of the percentage of players using performance-enhancing drugs, what percent don't?
Well, first of all, I believe baseball's really cleaned it up, you know. Back when all the testing started, 2003, 2004, I believe a lot of guys were on something, you know, to try to stay on the field and put up numbers and
More
you know,
so than today.
Yeah, today, you know, I believe, you know, if I was to throw a number out there today, I might say the game's probably 90% cleaned up. Yeah, it's cleaned up. They've done a really good job. The testing is strict, and you know, it's.
Did you do steroids?
I've tried it, yeah, 2 times. I never did it when I was in the off season trying to lift weights, get strong to hit home runs. I was a young player. I was told that, you know, I had 3 or 4 shoulder injuries, and I was told that it would help me, you know, get back on the field, stay on the field. I separated my shoulder in 2000, and they called it a 3rd-degree separation. And, you know, I got on some juice, and next thing you know, at 3-4 weeks, I was back in the lineup.
So how does that happen? Does one of the older guys say, you know, is it easy to access? They hook you up? Like, how does it work?
It's not necessarily your teammates. You just, you know, you just find it, friends or you know.
Did you at all, when you were doing it, think, this isn't legal, this isn't right, this is against baseball? Was that in your head at all?
Of course, you know, you think that, but, you know, there's so much money involved. You know, when you're a ball player, baseball means everything to you, you know. And
What's
I was
livelihood?
and I was a young player, and all I wanted to do was be in that lineup every day and play. And you pretty much will do whatever it takes as a young ball player to do that.
Right. I want to get a lot covered in a short period of time.
Sure.
Greenies. Greenies are amphetamines. Baseball players have used amphetamines through the history of the game, certainly going back to the 50s.
Sure.
I'm sure you use them.
Sure.
They're illegal now in baseball.
Is that the term that they still use?
Yeah.
Beans, yeah. I've talked to players who have said, you can't get through a 162-game season. It's not a short season. It's not 16 football games. You got to go through the whole year. And greenies were necessary to get the energy up every night.
Sure, you're right. But then again, now the greenies, I believe all that's cleaned up. There's testing for it now, but it was definitely a problem in baseball. And like you said, it's 162 games. I think it's 183 days. I think it's 22 off days during the season. So it's, baseball's every day. You got to get up for the game, and guys were doing it.
And greenies were always...
And nobody cared,
And nobody cared. And, there have been buckets of coffee with greenies in them, et cetera,
Right.
for players, but they were amphetamines. They're amphetamines. But let's get on to now. Ryan Braun was the face of the new generation, the clean players. Terrific player. Another local guy from here.
Great player.
Denied.
Great play. Are we looking at players now who are on either steroids, HGH? What's the reality?
Like I said, I think it's pretty cleaned up. Who knows when he was on it? We don't know when he failed the test or with all that MVP stuff a few years back. So,
all right, okay, I've had enough. Listen, good, appreciate this guy coming out, but to me, not good enough. Not good enough. It just does the impact. This is a pebble hitting the water, okay, and the ripple effect is going to be very limited. What we need is a lot of players to come out. We need players to come out that are going to acknowledge the same things. And he mentioned, the things that I theorized correctly on shows previous, including this one here today and tonight. The money involved, your career longevity, the dollars involved, the ability to stay on the field, recovering from injuries at a dramatically faster rate than if you didn't take steroids. All of this stuff is tied into the package of the decision that a player is faced and confronted with. Do I use steroids? Do I not use steroids? So, I laud Robert Fick for doing what he did, but to me, this is really almost inconsequential. It's got to come from a collective group of players, a body of players. You know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see, instead of a role player like a Robert Fick, who, by the way, I might make mention that he went to one All-Star game when he was with the Detroit Tigers, but what I'd love to see is 15 to 25 players get together and hold a press conference somewhere in this country and really break down and talk about the culture of drugs that was at one time rampant throughout the game and to some degree is still evident today, whether we're talking about PEDs or straight steroids. The testing has gotten better. Baseball seems to be getting more serious about this, but again, it's not, to me, it's got to be much more dramatic. The cleansing will not begin until we have players in mass. And again, you have 15, 25 guys sitting at a podium, a long table with their names in front of the microphones and answering questions and talking about this. This is what goes a long ways toward ridding the game of the mentality and the culture and maybe even talking about, in the years after their careers have ended, what, if any, kind of physical problems have they've become aware of since they have used steroids, since they have used any one of a number of different kind of enhancing drugs that they used in their careers. Baseball needs these kinds of players to be advocates of the strong anti-drug position that baseball seemingly wants to take right now. I say seemingly because I'm not convinced yet. There needs to be a level and an environment of discouragement that rids this problem out of the game, if we can even get to that problem. And again, I've got serious reservations if we can really rid it completely out of the game, totally and completely. But if they're going to do it, it's going to be the combined and collective forces of baseball's administration, baseball's current-day contemporary players, and the players such as Robert Fick, but a hell of a lot more, and certainly more name-worthy and recognizable than a Robert Fick. They're going to have to get together and come together collectively in unison to attack this problem head-on. It's the only way I see them making great strides. Because great testing is one thing, but again, we talk about the designers, you talk about the chemists that are out there, always looking to stay, if not 5 steps ahead of what the testing, what kind of testing is being done now. 888 and the Mad Dog 6. Time to go to the phones for the first time on this Thursday show. Let me start it off by going to Billy in Central Illinois, and he's on the Dino Costa Show, Hour 2 on this Thursday. Hi, Bill.
What's up, Dino?
Hi, Bill.
Great show as always.
Thank you.
I got to admit, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of people across the country, that it's getting old. You know, the steroid talk, and unless you live under a rock or just completely naive, you should realize, and you should have known for a long time, that most of the players in baseball were taking something. I've always said, you know, probably 75%, but I think we all can agree that easily over half of the players was taking something. I think that's a fair number that we all would agree on. I think it's much higher, but you see what I'm saying. So, all these people that jump on Braun and Rodriguez and act like, you know, it's just horrendous that they do this, unless that kind of person would have to hate the whole game then. This last 10 to 15 to 20 years, probably it would just be better if it hasn't happened for that person, for that fan that jumps on Braun and Rodriguez so much. You know, I guess my message to the people is wake up. Most of the players were taking something. You know, so don't jump on one player because he took something. If you want to get mad at them because they're not being truthful, fine. That's a separate argument. But for the people that just act shocked and, oh, no, they're hurting the integrity of the game, well, most of the players were. Most of the players were taking something. How could they not? A fringe player like this guy that you were just talking about, you know, he didn't have great numbers. Well, would he even been in the league if he was taking steroids? Probably not. You're going to have a lot of players like him that took something so they could actually play. And a lot of players, and I called in not too long ago and talked about the Clemens and the Bonds of the world that did it to, you know, for longevity of their careers. Because if they see some of these guys that they know they're more talented than, and they know that they're taking the stuff and they're catching up to them statistic-wise, well, why wouldn't they want to see what they could do with the stuff?
Well, of course. And the thing that I mentioned, and thanks for your call, Bill, I appreciate it. The thing that I mentioned listen, two things. I mentioned A-Rod a couple of weeks ago, and I'll get back to that in a second. But what I mentioned earlier this week was that it seems as though people have had their feelings validated through Ryan Braun. And to me, while Braun's penalty is merited, and while the scorn is merited, and he did lie, and he did lie about a person who was involved in handling his urine sample with the test and so on and so forth, while Ryan Braun deserves all of the negative commentary that has come his way, to me, it has gone to well above and beyond what it should be, and it seems like Ryan Braun and Ryan Braun alone is the guy who shall serve as the example that baseball wants to make out of Ryan Braun as a warning to the rest of the major league community that, hey, you do what Ryan Braun does, and you may wind up like Ryan Braun. I cannot, for the life of me, think that people are not thinking along my lines when I talk about the Ryan Braun situation in the hypocritical nature and the connections to the hypocrisy that Ryan Braun represents in so many ways. I mentioned Bonds. I mentioned Clemens. I mentioned Sosa. I mentioned Palmeiro. I could name other guys. I think what Billy's trying to say here is that, you know, wake up, because it was virtually every player in Major League Baseball at the height of the steroid age. Yes, and Robert Fick is evidence of that. Who? Exactly. Okay, but think about this now. You're talking about Alex Rodriguez, and this. What has been circulating lately is that Alex Rodriguez may get a lifetime ban. Two things. One, how do you do that to Alex Rodriguez, number one, when he's never been suspended to begin with? How do you give him a lifetime ban? Number two, as crazy as it may seem, and believe me, I'm completely aware of the narcissistic tendencies that are a part of Alex Rodriguez's makeup. Okay, let me start there. But do you know something? What really hurts me more than anything is that I pity Alex Rodriguez, but not in the way that you may be thinking. I pity Alex Rodriguez because here's a guy that was blessed with beyond enormous talent that is going to be remembered. I mean, how many home runs does Alex Rodriguez have? I mean, how many tremendous seasons has he had even before he started to take the juice, right? Here's a guy, think about it, one of the most enormously blessed baseball players of all time, should be remembered as one of the all-time greats. I mean, up in the pantheon of the greatest names in baseball's history. And instead, where I pity Alex Rodriguez is that after his career is over, even now, he's a walking cartoon. He's a punchline. He's a bad joke, is what he is. Think about that. I mean, you know, you can hate on A-Rod all you want, and I don't hate on him as much as I just think the man was just overly stupid, made so many bad decisions in his life, made so many of the wrong moves in his life, and became so wrapped up in becoming Alex Rodriguez, almost as though Alex Rodriguez and A-Rod was another person entirely. Okay, I don't think that Alex Rodriguez had the proper guidance, the proper rooting in his life that would have allowed him to steer clear of so many of the entanglements that have tripped him up throughout his career. But think about the enormous God-given raw physical talent that A-Rod has always been in possession of. I mean, this is a guy as talented who could do things on a baseball field that mere mortals who played the game never could dream of doing. And yet he's going to be thought of as nothing more than a joke, a bad joke at that. That's bad for baseball, is what it's bad. It's certainly bad for Alex Rodriguez, of course, but it's bad for baseball. Because this should be a guy that should have been remembered as one of the all-time greats. And when Alex Rodriguez is done with this game forever, at some point in the very near future, 10 and 15 years that goes by, and Alex Rodriguez is going to look back at his career, and he's going to wonder what should have been for him in his career. He'll get nowhere close to Cooperstown. And yet, he may have been among the top 10, certainly the top 12 most physically gifted, raw talent athletes that ever put on a pair of baseball spikes and played on the field between the lines. And he's not going to be thought of anywhere near in those kinds of words. Here we are on July 25th, 2013, and who's paying the penalties for Barry Bonds, for Alex Rodriguez, for Mark McGwire, for Sammy Sosa, for Rafi Palmeiro, for the hundreds, if not thousands of players who took steroids on a regular and consistent basis? Who's paying the price? Ryan Braun. Ryan Braun is paying the price. Again, merited in terms of the penalty. I feel no sympathy at all. Yes, he lied. But you know what? So did all of them. They lied. They lied. And baseball stood paralyzed, stood frozen in time, and just allowed it to continue. Even though you knew, I knew, everybody knew. Don't tell me that Barry Bonds has suffered the same fate, anywhere close to the same fate as Ryan Braun. Barry Bonds had the entire San Francisco Giants dugout come out of the dugout and meet him at home plate when he hit home run number 756. Okay? Don't tell me that Barry Bonds suffered the same consequence. He didn't. He still hasn't to this very day. Don't tell me that Mark McGwire suffered anywhere near what Ryan Braun is going through in the humiliation, self-produced humiliation, I might add, with Ryan Braun. But don't tell me that Mark McGwire suffered that either. Mark McGwire's gone out to coach in St. Louis in their dugout as their hitting instructor, and now is the hitting instructor for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Don't tell me that McGwire and Bonds suffered the same similar fate that Ryan Braun did. They did not. They have not. In all likelihood, they never will. Chris is in Washington, D.C. He's on the Dino Costa Show. It's hour 2 on this Thursday, I think. Chris, are you there? Chris is... He was there. He is there. Hi, Chris. Hi, Chris.
There you go. Hey, Dino, it's the same thing with, who's that bicyclist? Lance Armstrong, same thing. I mean, you know, he's going to be remembered as a liar and a cheat, and, you know, he was a phenomenal athlete. He always was, but, you know, he went and juiced it up, and, you know, and he's the same type of deal as the rest of the baseball. A lot of professional sports are going this way. I mean, football has got to have 70 or 80% of the guys got to be on some type of juice somewhere. I mean, and nobody's even talking about that. They're talking about baseball. I mean, golf has it. I mean, there's people everywhere in every sport that's doing it, and it's pretty scary, to be honest. And what do you draw the lines at records? I mean, when do you? What do you say about all these records?
Well, again, that's impossible to do because once you draw that line is there, right? And then you go 5 more years and you found out that a few other guys, after you drew the original line, they were involved with drugs that they shouldn't have been using. So what do? You draw another line? Yeah, that's why you can't go back retroactively and say, well, we're taking this many, home runs away from you. Because now if you're taking away the home runs, they affect the overall team scope. And maybe the team, now what do you got to do? Readjust the team records as well? You can't do that. Bloomfield, New Jersey. Peter is on the Dino Costa Show on this Thursday, hour 2. Hi, Pete.
Dino, I love the fact that I get to talk to you for the first time. I've become a big fan of yours since I got Sirius, satellite.
Well, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. What I wanted to say is, these guys, even if they don't make the Hall of Fame or they don't get the records, don't get recognized like Bonds' records and McGuire, Alex Rodriguez is laughing his way to the bank if his contract doesn't get, annulled by the Yankees or he doesn't retire and he's still going to make $100 million without even playing one more game. And he's made enough money by doing it, and whether or not he lies or tells the truth, he's still made more money than, any of us could dream of.
Well, true, and the teams are culpable as well, and you make a very good point, Pete. And listen, when the Yankees had a glorious opportunity to rid themselves of Alex Rodriguez, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it because the Yankees selfishly thought that with A-Rod eventually going for the all-time home run record, with the opening of the new stadium and everything else, and the marketing that would go into that, and the dollars that the Yankees would generate as Alex Rodriguez theoretically got closer and closer to the all-time home run record, the Yankees were totally and completely aware of the fact that this guy had been juicing up. Of course they were. And yet, I don't feel any sympathy for the Yankees. Oh, we got, X number of dollars that are still left on the books for Alex Rodriguez. Okay, fine. You want us to cry you a river? Why? What, you knew all about Alex Rodriguez before he put pen to paper and signed his most recent contract a couple of years ago. So I don't feel bad. Again, and this all goes back to the hypocrisy element that I talk about. Yes, they've served up on a dish for you, Ryan Braun. Here's your pound of flesh, folks. Go after him. Go ahead. Tear them apart. Rip them a new one. Do it. Okay, you feel good doing that, do you? Ryan Braun is paying the price for everyone else. And this is the hypocritical nature of what I'm trying to get through to you all. That as much as Ryan Braun deserves what he got, the others didn't get anywhere near what they deserved. Mark McGuire was front page of Time Magazine, The Sporting News, Sports Illustrated, Newsweek. His home run chase back in '98 was front page news and was on the lead of Sports Center and all news programs. The Maris family flew in, the big hugs in the stands. But Ryan Braun's paying the price. Ryan Braun. Okay. You feel good about that? Good. Listen, do I feel good about it? I don't feel as good about it as maybe I would have, as if everybody else had to run through that same gauntlet that Ryan Braun is running through right now. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. James is on the Dino Costa Show on this Thursday. Hi, James.
How you doing, Dino?
Hi.
Actually, I'm the second-time caller. I got through both times I called, but I love this show. I had satellite radio for 2 years, and I listen to your show all the time.
Great, thank you.
But the comment I wanted to make, when you were saying about Ryan Braun paying the price for a lot of those guys, I think he is paying the price. But back in 2003, when they were sapping Barry Bonds and Clemens and talking about McGuire and Sosa, it was just the cusp of it, of how do they deal with this issue. So when you're talking about those guys back in 2003 and you're talking about Ryan Braun now, it was really being brought to the forefront in 2003. So they really didn't know how to tackle that issue. And the other reason was because those three guys with Bonds, Sosa, McGuire, they were generating so much excitement and money in baseball. I think at that time, They wanted to talk about the issue, but they didn't want to tackle the issue the way they should have because of the revenue at that time. So the thing about it is that also with the Hall of Fame thing, and believe me, I am one that was a college athlete. I was a minor league professional baseball player for the Milwaukee Brewers organization. And I never took anything. But the thing is, when it comes to Bonds and Clemens, I understand they took steroids. But apparently Barry Bonds didn't start taking those until 2003. With Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, without those steroids, Mark McGwire doesn't get into the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds was already a 6-time MVP. So I understand that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens cheated later in their careers. So
well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Bonds, and you're right. He was a Hall of Fame player before he decided to go to the needle. But here's the thing about Bonds that I will back Barry. Now, listen, I'm no fan of Barry Bonds, okay? Well, listen, I'm a fan of his in terms of his athletic ability on the baseball field. He was incredible. But again, you talk about another guy. I talked about A-Rod before. How are we going to remember Barry Bonds? Not for the 5-tool player that he eventually became before he actually took steroids. But again, he's a bad joke. He's a punchline. He's the poster child for steroids in a certain way. He never had to pay for that the way that Ryan Braun is right now. But here's the thing I'll defend Barry Bonds with, and this goes back to my analogy before when I put myself in the shoes of a player determining whether or not I'm going to take part in all the steroid use that's going on during the height of the steroid era in Major League Baseball. Barry Bonds was watching guys who had not even close to the talent that he had hitting all these home runs. And Barry Bonds said, no, wait a minute, hold on a second. I'm hitting, 35, 40 home runs a year. Yeah, I'm driving in 120, 130 runs. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. These guys are getting more notoriety than I am. If I go to the juice, hey, look, you want to talk about playing on an even in a level field? I'll go to the juice and I'll show you what I can do. In a way, I don't blame Bonds for having that kind of an attitude. As much as I deplored his arrogance during that time, after he started taking the juice, and it became even more surly than he was before that. As much as I held him in contempt, when I think about it, I don't blame Bonds for having the same kind of a mindset that I just said, where if you're going to do it and I'm not doing it, and you're getting more notoriety than me, and you're making maybe more money than I am, and people are paying more attention to you than me, and I'm 10 times the baseball player you are, okay, I'm going to do the juice too and watch what I can do. I don't blame Bonds for that attitude. Light House Point, Florida. Here is David on the Dino Costa Show. Hi, Dave.
Hey, I'm glad we're talking about Bonds. Now, here's my question to you, because we seem to think the same way. In your mind, one question: who is the all-time home run king?
Henry Aaron.
Great, we agree. Good, perfect. I like that answer, because I know you said before we can't backdate the records and we can't say anything, but Henry Aaron is the all-time home run king. Barry Bonds is a joke. He was a great player. He turned out to be a buffoon, but I'm glad you said that.
Well, Aaron, to me, David, Aaron is the all-time home run leader with 755. Babe Ruth is the greatest home run hitter who ever was. Aaron, the all-time leader. Ruth, the greatest home run hitter of all time. Rich is in Orlando, Florida. Hi, Rich.
Hey, Dino. How you doing?
Hi, Rich.
Hey, I have a kind of a different outlook of it. The game, when it was going on, when they had Bonds and McGwire and all that was the most watched baseball back then on TV. Everybody watched what was going on.
I'm aware of that.
But as far as the steroids are concerned, it's been going on for so long. I get to a point where, if they're going to do it, let them go out and do what they got to do. And it doesn't bother me, because I really don't. I don't care. They're going to play a game. It's just a game. They're trying to make money. I agree it's not good for your body, but they're doing it to themselves. I want to see a great game. If something can help them improve themselves, and it seems to be better on TV, I want to watch it.
Well, yeah, there's that argument that says, especially with the high cost of attending major league games these days, with the high cost of sports entertainment these days, you want to see something prodigious. You want to see something special. You want to see something of spellbinding quality. And if that means, there's a lot of people who have the feeling that, you know what, it doesn't matter to me. I'm paying, $115 to sit in a seat here. Doesn't matter to me. I want to see the best of the best, and how they get to be the best, I really don't care, because it's not my body. I'm not suffering any negative consequences from doing drugs. If they want to take drugs, let them take drugs. I don't care. There's a lot of people who feel like that. In fact, I think that is a feeling that is building in momentum from a lot of people, and maybe that's unfortunate. Matthew's in Bismarck, North Dakota. He's on the Dino Costa Show, Hour 2 on a Thursday. Hi, Matt.
Yeah, getting back to the whole soccer thing, and you mentioned the Alberta, thing where there was a soccer team in Alberta and they threw it all white players. You don't have to make an analogy. There's a team in Salt Lake City, and you could say it right now. What if it was all white players on Salt Lake City? People would go nuts, and Hispanics should also be mad about this. And people that are offended, people that are fans of USA should be offended by it, because you're not getting the best players. If I'm a season ticket holder of the team, I want the best players, whether they're Hispanic, white, Asians, blacks, whatever. They should be offended more than anybody else, because they're not getting the best players on their team. They're getting the best Mexican players on their team, and that leaves out a lot of people, including a lot of people in Latin America, from Honduras, from Guatemala, from Brazil. If you're a season ticket holder of Chivas Luce, you should be pissed about it.
Well, I think that the majority of their fan base, though, is Mexican related. So, and by the way, they're not drawing very well, and they're in last place in the MLS Western Division. But again, the way that the media has reported on this leaves much to be desired, and just shows the hypocritical nature and the double standard that is clearly existent in not only the media but the sports media as well. Atlantic City, New Jersey, USA. Here's Mike on the Dino Costa Show on a Thursday, Hour 2. Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you doing? Great show. Hey, listen, I don't have no problem with these guys doing whatever they want to do to perform any better. But what really bugs me, the whole thing, what really bugs me is how these guys, they run like chickens. Why can't they just admit it? They think it's right. It helps them perform. And, you guys do whatever you want to do. I mean, why can't they admit to, I believe that this is right? Why can't they say that? Why do they got to run like chickens?
Well, listen, whether they want to defend their position of taking steroids or explain their position of taking steroids during the height of the steroid era, either one would be acceptable to me, so long as they came out and they acknowledged that they did use, and most everybody else did as well. Eitan is in New Rochelle, New York. He's on the Dino Costa Show on this Thursday, Hour 2. Eitan. Hi, Eitan.
Hey, Dino, you've been spot on today about most things, but the one thing I didn't like, now it seems to me that you seem like you're against the idea of them using steroids, which I'm completely against. I don't see the difference between professional wrestling and 1996 to 2003 era. I'm shocked if anyone else does. And I'm a Yankee fan, and I got big problems with what they accomplished. So it's not like I'm talking, my team, it doesn't matter. It's not convenient outrage. The thing that you said that upset me, and I hear it on commercials, this fight that you say, so I don't know if it's in the context of something, but if you said it, you were totally wrong, which is you're saying that there are just almost as many people cheating today as there were 8 or 9 years ago. And I don't know if you said that, because but basically...
No. I didn't say that. But what I did say was that there has been an increase in PED use that was not, going on at 10, 15 years ago. There's a lot of guys on PEDs now.
Right. But the thing is, two things I want to say. I think Bud Selig did too much damage for him to not be seen as a creep, and someone who destroyed the game. But I will say this: the statistics bear out that the majority of the league is not on it. The jump in statistics after 2005 to now is humongous. So anyone who says that the testing isn't working or whatever, doesn't know what the hell they're talking about.
Well, I didn't say that the testing is not working. And if you ask me based on instinct alone, if I think less guys are involved with drug usage in Major League Baseball now versus 5 years ago, I would say yes, I would agree with that. However, what I did say was that there are ways to get around the current testing, with the chemists and the drug designers always looking to stay a couple steps ahead. It's always been, and in theory, it always will be that way. Back with more Hour 2 right after this.